Hello and welcome to Fostering Student Engagement in the Secondary Mathematics Classroom, diving into Desmos. So I am Ashlyn Cage, your high school math content trainer. So remember our instructional focus for this school year: consistency, 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 and consistency in reasoning and problem solving skills throughout the district. So our agenda for today is Desmos as it relates to testing, identifying strategies for promoting student engagement in mathematics, examining Desmos as a tool to promote student engagement, and engage in problem solving, posing tasks that encourage active involvement and student engagement. But we're doing all this through Desmos. So if you look here, any links that are in this presentation, if you use this bit.ly, it'll give you that. And also there will be a survey connected to this bit.ly when you click this link or type it in. And you can tell us what else you need to see from the EBR math department. Do you need to see more around Desmos? Do you need to see certain lessons based on Desmos? And we'll also have that in this link. What lessons go well with Algebra 1? What lessons go well with geometry? So make sure you pay attention to that when you use that link. So why should we actively engage students? Students learn more when they are actively involved in their education and have opportunities to think about and apply what they are learning in a variety of settings. So what I am showing here is the LDOE online tools training. So why am I giving you guys this? Because when we talk about Desmos is so important at the high school level, specifically for our Algebra 1 and geometry students, because the Desmos calculator is built into the test. And we want to make sure our students know how to use the calculator front and backwards, even though it's not a real calculator, it's online. But we want them to know how to use it well. So if you click the link, it is in that bit.ly under that document, and you just click the link and it'll bring you here. And if you notice, you go under standard online tools, and we are looking at mathematics, Algebra 1, and geometry. So to help drive your instruction on those flex days, you could do this, or on days where you're teaching a certain skill, standard, module, lesson. Based on what you're teaching, you could choose one of these questions if it goes along with what you're teaching. Or it could be your bell ringer that day if it aligns with the bell ringer that you're utilizing as well. It just depends on how you want to utilize this. But I would say definitely use this if you've never used this before. So what's so great about this online tools training? It shows you how to use all the tools that is on the LEAP 2025 assessment. But it also shows you where the calculator will be, because that's the biggest struggle. The students know how to use the Desmos calculator, but they're used to typing in desmos.com to find it. Whereas on the assessment, they have to click a certain link. So if you notice here, it's showing you all the different buttons that they have. It's showing you the pointer, how they could cross out certain parts of the question. It's showing you how they can highlight, so they can highlight parts of the question, so they can annotate on their test. So if they're looking at a reasoning question, which is our focus of this year, if they're looking at a reasoning piece, they can highlight the important information that they need to solve the question. So like here, if the growth of the sunflower continues at the same rate, super important, same rate, to understand it's going to do it what? Consistently. So then there's also, they can have a sticky note on their test. If they need to magnify, they can make it larger. There's a line guide. They can make lines. There's a scientific calculator. So they have this one. And then here, the graphing tool is our Desmos calculator. And we need to make sure our students know these things, because some students go into the test and struggle because they don't know what any of these things are, and they waste time trying to figure out what those things are. So make sure you find time to look at the online tools training, especially in Algebra 1, Geometry, or any of the lower grades until third grade for our testing groups. And if you saw, there was a 3 through 8 one as well. So make sure you're utilizing this and making sure your students understand what they will see on the test. Because remember, most of the time, our students are not struggling based on the standards. They're struggling based on the tech enhanced parts of this. So we want to make sure that they have those components so there is no barrier in them doing well on that part of the assessment. But definitely look at this and have them to utilize the Desmos calculator on here. And you can even change the question if you like and change it to something that pertains to what you're covering. So that's showing you how that question is set up. So then you could do one of these questions and type in the equation and then have them graph the point. So just make sure you're using that Desmos calculator, and even have them to log into the online tools training and use it from here instead of using it from Desmos.com, so they could get used to seeing it in this platform. Okay, so moving on. So that's what I wanted you to see from the LDOE side. So navigating Desmos. So when you go to Desmos, it looks like this. So if you just want to utilize the graphing calculator, you could just click this link. Then you have using Desmos Classroom, where you have the teacher area and the student area. And so if you're a teacher and you already created a lesson for your students, they could come here and just type in the code that you gave them. Or you could just give them a link that will take them directly to what you did. The best way to do anything in Desmos, even when you're using just the Desmos calculator, is to sign in with Google. Because if you use the Desmos calculator, you can actually save some of what you've done in the Desmos calculator and look at it at a later time. So that's if you're signed in. And so down here it's showing you Desmos Math and the units that they have for Desmos Math. And so your classroom is up here for teachers and for students. And then here are your math tools. You have your graphing calculator, your scientific calculator, and your forward function calculator. If you're at the lower grade levels, you can utilize this one. If you're in a geometry classroom, you can use the geometry tools. Or in 8th grade math, you can utilize the geometry tools as well, because we know you look at it in depth at that level too with our transformations. So I won't go into too in depth with the graphing calculator. If you need a video on that, please let me know, and I will create that for you, or one of our content trainers or our supervisor will do it as well. So let's get to it. Oops. All right, so Desmos Classroom. So this is what the Desmos Classroom looks like. So welcome to Desmos Classroom. And so now it's taking me to a link. And I remember that all these links are in that bit.ly. So any of the things that I'm showing you, if you want to look at it in real time while you're playing this video, you could just go to that bit.ly. I'm just waiting for this to come up. Okay, so either you can go here and you can sign in, you can join as a student or the teacher interaction. And so this is just where you could create your free account and learn about Desmos Math for 6 through Algebra 1. So you can create a teacher account. So either if you have one, sign in, or you create one. And for me, I have one, and I just sign in with Google. One of the easiest ways to sign in. And so now it's showing you my Desmos Classroom platform. And so this is what it looks like. So you have your starter screen activities, you have your distant learning activities for algebra, your linear functions, definitely for algebra 1, the linear functions, and some of it for 8th grade as well, but I would definitely do this in algebra 1. Then you have the pizza maker activities, scaling machines, which helps you with scale drawings, dilation similarities, that could be done at the 8th grade level, or geometry, and so forth and so on. So let's go back to my presentation. So now let's look at a specific activity, matching my line. And so this is dealing with linear functions. So this would be a great activity for the end of 8th grade or in algebra 1 in like module 3. So just waiting for it to load so we can look at it. So if you notice, this is the student version. So what I did was, I'll show you how to do this from the teacher perspective, but this match my line is from the student perspective. And so either I could sign in with Google as a student, sign in with Desmos, continue without signing in. So let's just look at it from continuing not signing in. And so then you enter by utilizing your name, and make sure you tell your students to use their real name or a nickname that you know, not Peacemaker or something crazy. I love dogs, nothing like that. Make sure they at least put their first name. And I'm using my son's name. So match my line. So from the student perspective, this is what it looks like. So it's initiating the activity, and it's going to show us what the activity looks like from the student's perspective. And so it starts here. For each Match My Line challenge, plot a line that passes through the given points. And so let's get started. And so if you notice, I have a line that goes through those 2 points already. And so you can make more lines that go through those points. So adjust the equation so the line passes through the points. So I know, looking at this, I don't have a y-intercept because it goes through the origin, but I need to fix my slope because my slope is not correct. It's telling me that I'm rising 2 and going right 1. So what should my equation be, or what should my slope be? So I should rise 2, 1, 2, but then I notice I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to fix my equation and make sure your students understand that they could use the backslash bar to make fractions, or they could use the keyboard. And so I could write 2/4, and I would even make them take it a step further and simplify that, because on most assessments, that form won't be on there. It'll be the simplified form, which is 1/2. And so then I can submit it. And I can always edit my response until this is due, or until I finish the whole assessment. And if you notice, I could just go through doing this. So it's starting off with your students creating the equation in y equals kx form. So it's scaffolding already. And then it's taking the next step to make them create different equations. Well, my slope is positive, my slope is negative, but it is still going through the origin. Just to keep that y equals kx form or y equals mx form, to get students to activate prior knowledge, or to help students who have not done this before and don't understand slope-intercept form or linear equations. And so then now it's telling them to settle a dispute. So it's asking them which student is correct. So this is an error analysis problem. And so who do you think is right? And so now they have to explain with reasoning what we want our students to be able to do this year. To reason and explain. Consistency, consistency, consistency. And so we can have the students do that. And so that's what that one looks like. And if you click that link, you can go through the lesson as a student yourself and see what misconceptions you will have to better help your students to do well on this lesson. Or what notes do you need to give your students prior to them doing this lesson? Or what notes do you need to give your students after you have them to do this lesson? And how you would grade this. And what misconceptions do you foresee them having? So that is the activity as a student. So, strategies for encouraging student engagement. So, establish a learning environment that supports active and collaborative learning. Collaboration with others, especially to solve problems or learn challenging content, allows students to develop and simulate skills they use in real-world contexts. So, with this, you can either have them work alone or even work in pairs and have that collaboration piece, or even let them work alone, but they could discuss their answers with others. I know I used to do X3 before me just to see if they could support each other before they just come to Miss Cage, Miss Cage, Miss Cage, I need your help. No, did you ask your classmate? Well, they struggling too. Okay, well, let's discuss. Let's do a whole group discussion, or let's do this small group discussion, since it's the people around you and you that are struggling with this. And I'm going to just ask clarifying questions. So students should be engaged in activities that allow them to write about mathematics. So if you saw they had to choose or dispute who was right and who was wrong, then explain with math who was correct or who wasn't correct and why. So then plan and design activities that allow students to have multiple entry points, thus encouraging access for all. So you can plan activities, but if you notice, if you go to the EBR resource page, we have activities for you. So our showcase tasks, they'll help with this. These Desmos activities will help with this. Math Nation will help with scaffolding and supplementing and checking for understanding. So you don't even have to reinvent the wheel. There's most likely something out there for you. And guess what? Just send an email. See if we already have something done and we just don't have it on the EBR resource page. So, and it also allows students to make connection, form relationships between concepts, and make choices. So now we want to look at the Desmos teacher. So what does it look like from the teacher's perspective? Okay, let me exit out of this. I think I got too many tabs open, so it's running kind of slowly. Let me exit out of all this Desmos. Desmos. So if you notice, here's my match my line activity. My students have till December 13th to get it done. I have 2 students that have started, and this is the date that it was open, and here's the code. So I could put this on the board and say, if you don't have the link or the link is not working for you, go to mydesmos.com, go to that student part, and type in this code, and then it will get them to this activity. So if you want to see what's going on with your students while they are doing the Desmos activity, you could do the dashboard, or you could look at this after they leave, or you could have it up and just checking to see the student understanding. So let's click the dashboard. So the dashboard shows how your students are doing in real time, and it may be delayed by maybe a minute or so, because sometimes you're like, oh, you didn't answer that question, or Miss Cage, I did answer that question. Refresh, and then it'll be there. So here's the code, and then you could copy the link. And so if you look here, I use my child name twice. So The first Benjamin Cage, not Benjamin C, because we don't know what Benjamin C last name is, but Benjamin Cage, if you notice here, he got all of this done. And then the gray areas may be questions that he did not get to yet, or he's working on at that moment. And so you could click on them to check it to see if they're correct. And then a check mark will appear, but at this moment, it has not been checked yet. But in some of the lessons, it'll let you know if it's right or wrong. But if it's a dot, either it's a question where you have to go in to make sure it's correct. And so these are questions that are not done. And so if you're looking at this dashboard, you could say, oh, Benjamin, you need to go back and do questions 9, 10, 11. You just skipped over it and you did not put in any answers. And you could screenshot it. You could see what the teacher sees and the correct answers for it. And then, of course, what the students are putting in. And you can see it by student. You could pause it if you don't want students working on it. Like, say, for instance, this is something they did as an engagement piece just to activate prior knowledge. And you really just wanted them to do those first few questions where it was equations in the form of y equals kx just to activate that prior knowledge. You could pause it. Or you could control the pacing. Or if you're showing this to somebody else, or if you're showing this on the screen, you can make it to where it's anonymous. And then you can say, okay, look at this. This is how many students are done. This is where most of you guys are. Or you can even show them which question everybody's getting wrong. All right, you guys, look at this question. I see that most students have gotten this question wrong. Let's go to this question. So let's actually look at a question from the teacher's perspective so you can get a better look at how to utilize this. So if you notice here, it says adjust only the slope to this equation. So he already answered this question. And so this is his response. And then this is the equation. And so you could look at sample responses. You can see what your moves are to help this student. Teacher moves. Use the teacher dashboard to identify students who may need help. So you could switch to the the teacher dashboard to help students. Show correctness. So we see that this question is correct and the student got it correct. You could leave a comment. You could chat with the student to let them know great work or give them feedback on this. And that's another thing that we want to do consistently. Give our students feedback. So you could give feedback by question, or you could wait to the very end and then give an overview of feedback and saying, oh, well, these questions are wrong. Let's discuss this. Or these are the questions that you had a misconception on. Let's use Math Nation and look at section 1, topic 8. That's the Math Nation lesson I want you to look at. And in your workbook, it's page 3, or however you want to look at it. So you can utilize this to drive your instruction, or you can utilize this to make the next steps to how to utilize your Math Nation. Or any other way you see fit to utilize this. But it helps with that engagement piece. And remember, this is not to replace your Tier 1 curriculum. This is also a supplement to help get our students prepared for the LEAP test. And so here, if you look from the teacher view, it'll say responses. And so it'll only show you responses after the students have submitted. And then that's the overlay. But yeah, it'll give you the responses, and then you'll see which students are struggling, which question is the most missed question, and how to drive instruction from that. But remember, this is a supplement. So this is also something you could do on your flex days. Have them to work on one of these activities. And then you could go into your Math Nation. That way you are reviewing and not teaching anything new, but driving instruction and giving support around those lessons that you already covered. And so also, if you need it in a different language, you can put it in a different language. So that lesson was good for, the start of it is good for 8th grade math and 7th grade math students. And you can even have your 7th grade math students doing those first few questions because they work with proportional relationships, the constant of proportionality, and finding the COP. So in this situation, they'll be finding the COP for those equations that was in y equals kx form. And then also it tells you how long that takes. This is practice. This could be distant learning, and so forth and so on. And so over here, you can look at your different collections, what's featured in Desmos. And also in Math Nation, they have links to Desmos activities that go along with certain topics. So they are paired together already, if you didn't know. And so then here, if you look over here, it'll tell you the distant learning topics for algebra, the distant learning topics for algebra 2. There's even calculus on here, pre-calc, 8th grade math. So exponential functions, elementary grade. So for some of this, you don't have to try to figure out if it's good for algebra 1. Well, this is the activities that were created for algebra 1. And so match my parabola. They'll be great for quadratic equations to help students to understand quadratics more in-depthly. And it's scaffold. It tells you it's scaffold. So that's another good activity. So remember, if you have any questions or need any support, you can reach out to these emails, or when you do the survey, let us know what support you need. Do you need a more in-depth explaining of Desmos? Do you need more support around Math Nation? Let us know what you need support with, or what professional development or videos you need to see to help drive your instruction and help your students to be successful in your classroom. Have a great day.